You are not an angry person. That is what you have always told yourself, what you have always believed, what you have built so much of your identity around that the idea of questioning it feels almost threatening. You are the patient one, the understanding one, the one who sees all sides of a situation before reacting, the one who lets things go, the one people come to specifically because you do not overreact the way other people do. You are not an angry person. Except, there are moments, small ones mostly. A comment that lands wrong and you feel something rise in your chest before you push it back down. A situation where you gave everything and received almost nothing, and something in you tightened in a way you quickly decided was not anger, but just tiredness. A relationship where you absorbed more than your share for so long that somewhere along the way you stopped being able to feel how much it was actually costing you. Those moments, you explained them away, reframed them, decided they meant something other than what they were, because empaths are not angry people. But Carl Jung would sit across from you right now and say something that might be the most uncomfortable thing you have ever heard about yourself. He would say the anger is there. It has always been there. You just stopped being able to feel it a very long time ago. Stay with me. Because what Jung discovered about the hidden anger inside empaths, where it goes when it is never expressed, what it turns into over years of being buried, and what it quietly costs the person carrying it, is going to change something fundamental about how you understand yourself. Here is something worth sitting with before we go any further. Empaths are taught, not explicitly, not in words anyone ever said directly, that their anger is incompatible with their sensitivity, that you cannot be the person who feels everything deeply and also be someone who gets angry. That anger belongs to the people who do not understand, the people who react without thinking, the people who have not done the inner work, not to you. And so from very earlier than you probably realize, you learn to do something with your anger that felt like the more evolved choice. You learn to understand it away. Someone hurts you, and instead of feeling the anger of being hurt, you immediately move to understanding why they did it. Their childhood, their wounds, their capacity limitations, the specific way their pain expressed itself in your direction. And by the time you have finished understanding them, the anger has nowhere left to go. Because how do you stay angry at someone you completely understand? Jung called this the intellectualization of unexpressed rage, the process by which the empath converts what should be a feeling into an analysis. And he said it is one of the most sophisticated and most damaging psychological defenses a sensitive person ever develops. But here is where it gets dangerous for empaths specifically, because what happens to the anger that gets understood away before it can be felt? It does not disappear. Jung was extremely clear about this. Emotion that is not processed does not dissolve. It does not evaporate because you found a more generous interpretation of the situation that produced it. It does not decide to leave simply because you chose empathy over reaction. It goes somewhere else. And in the empath who has been understanding their anger away for years, for decades sometimes, it tends to go somewhere specific. Inward. Jung called this the retroflexion of rage, the turning of unexpressed anger back against the self. And it does not arrive wearing the label anger, so you would recognize it. It arrives as depression, as the specific flatness that appears when something in you has been fighting for so long, with nowhere to go, that it simply stopped fighting. It arrives as chronic exhaustion, not the tiredness that comes from doing too much, but the deeper tiredness that comes from suppressing something that needed to be expressed in every room you have ever walked into. It arrives as the persistent, low-grade anxiety that lives in your chest without a clear cause. That is not about any specific situation, but about the accumulated weight of everything you felt and then decided you were not allowed to feel. It arrives as the inability to set boundaries without immediately feeling guilty for having them, as the tendency to over-apologize, as the specific discomfort of receiving anger from other people that feels so overwhelming. It confirms your belief that anger itself is something dangerous that needs to be managed, rather than simply felt and expressed and released. The anger did not go away. It just went underground. And underground anger is far more destructive than anything you would have felt if you had simply let yourself be angry in the first place. Listen carefully to what happens next, because this is the part most people miss entirely. Jung identified a specific sign that an empath is carrying buried anger they have stopped being able to access. It is not what you would expect. It is not sudden outbursts, not inexplicable irritability, not the obvious signs of someone whose frustration has built to a point it can no longer be contained. The most reliable sign that an empath is carrying years of buried anger is that they have become extraordinarily good at tolerating things that should not be tolerated. Think about that for a moment. The empath who cannot feel their own anger loses access to the signal that is supposed to tell them when something is wrong, when a line has been crossed, when what is being asked of them is beyond what any person should reasonably be expected to give. Anger, and when it is healthy and accessible and not buried under years of being told it is incompatible with sensitivity, is information. It says this is not okay. It says you have given enough. It says something here is not right, and you deserve to acknowledge that. But the empath who has buried their anger has lost access to that signal, and so they keep tolerating, not because they have no limits, but because they can no longer feel where their limits are. Jung said this is the most functionally devastating consequence of buried anger in a sensitive person. Not that it hurts them emotionally, that it leaves them without the internal compass they need to navigate their own life. But here is the part that will absolutely change your life, because Jung did not discover the empath's buried anger to add another layer of complexity to an already complicated inner life. He discovered it because he believed something about anger that the empath's entire conditioning had taught them to reject. He believed anger was sacred, not destructive, not primitive, not the evidence of a person who has not done the work. Sacred, in the specific sense that it is one of the psyche's most fundamental communications about what matters, about what has been violated, about where the boundary between self and other has been crossed in a way that needs to be acknowledged. Jung said that the empath who cannot access their anger is not a more evolved version of a human being. They are a less complete one because they have cut themselves off from a fundamental source of self-knowledge. The anger that tells them what they value, the anger that identifies where they have been hurt, the anger that, if they could only let themselves feel it, would point them directly toward the places in their life where something genuinely needs to change. So what does accessing buried anger actually look like for someone who has spent years learning to convert it into understanding before it can be felt? It is not about expressing it to the people who generated it, not necessarily, not as a first step. It is about something more private than that. Jung called it the honest encounter with suppressed emotion, the willingness to sit alone safely without the immediate social pressure to manage how you are coming across, and let yourself feel what you actually felt in the situations where you chose understanding instead. To go back to the relationship where you gave more than you received, and instead of analyzing why they were the way they were, just feel what it cost you. To go back to the conversation where someone said something that landed wrong, and you immediately found a compassionate interpretation, and just feel, for once, the impact of what was said before you explain it. To stop being fair, for just a moment, just to yourself, in private, with no audience, and let the anger be there without immediately trying to transform it into something more palatable. Jung said that for the empath who has been burying anger for a long time, this practice feels almost physically uncomfortable at first, because the conditioning runs deep. The belief that their anger makes them a lesser version of themselves is not something that dissolves in an afternoon. But he said that something happens in the empath who commits to this even imperfectly. They start to feel more real, more present in their own life, more able to identify what they actually want and what they actually need and what they will and will not accept going forward. Not because the anger made them harsh or reactive or anything like the thing they feared anger would make them, but because having access to the full range of their emotional experience, including the parts they were taught to manage before they could be felt, makes them whole in a way that understanding without feeling never could. The anger is not your enemy. It never was. It is the part of you that has been paying attention this whole time. The part that noticed every time someone took more than they gave. Every time you swallowed something you should have said. Every time you chose their comfort over your truth and called it empathy when it was actually self-abandonment. It has been keeping a record, not to punish you, to show you something about where you have been, about what you have accepted that deserved to be refused, about who you have been protecting at the expense of yourself. And if you can sit with it, just long enough to actually hear what it has been trying to tell you, it will show you something else too, where you need to go next. Jung spent his entire career saying one thing about the parts of ourselves we refuse to acknowledge. They do not go away. They wait. And they get louder. Your anger has been waiting, and it has something important to say. Are you finally ready to listen? If something in this reached a part of you that you have not let yourself access in a long time, that part is not something to be afraid of. It is the most honest thing you carry. Share this with the empath in your life, who is always the understanding one, who never seems to get angry, who absorbs everything and explains everyone and never once names what all of that has actually cost them. They need to hear that their anger is not a contradiction of their sensitivity. It is the most sensitive part of them, the part that felt everything and never got to say so. And subscribe, because what is coming next is for the empath who is finally ready to stop understanding everyone else and start understanding themselves.